everybody, and welcome to this video. We are looking at RPG Maker MV today, which was released on Nintendo Switch just now, courtesy of Nippon Ichi, and I really like the RPG Maker games on console. I got into the 3DS one in particular in a big way when it was released towards the end of the 3DS's life, and I have really enjoyed my time with this one as well. What I thought would be interesting in terms of a video would be to show you the various tool sets and the creative process. So actually how I go about making these things, or how you can go about making these things when you play it yourself. So that is what I'm going to do with this video. It's a bit of a live record and I'm just going to talk over the top as I play. But what I'll do first is show you what I've already done. So I've spent about an hour and a half, as you can see a little clock down in the bottom of the screen there ticking along. I've spent an hour and a half setting up a very basic kind of template for what we can do with this software, and it really is just a town with a couple of interactive elements, and we'll build on that and I'll show you how I did it in a second. But if we play that first, because that's probably the best way to show you what you can do with this. So save and play test. Now RPG Maker MV is not like the PC ones where you can import your own assets and effectively make a commercial product. You're using the assets that are provided to you via RPG Maker. You can share your games online, which is a really useful deal, I guess, because that way other people can play your RPGs, but you won't be able to make something commercial or export it to other platforms like you can with the PC one. That makes this software more of a toy than a bit of serious software like RPG Maker can be. So you should go in with that expectation. If you look at it as a toy and a little bit of fun to play around with, then I don't think you'll be disappointed with it, because the toolset is quite robust. You can do basically everything with the game, with the software, that you can do with the PC version, only you can't do the export and import of your own original assets, which you need to do if you want to make a commercial product. Which is why you see, the practice is the name of the thing that I gave my game, but that art asset is a stock one that was provided with RPG Maker MV. I wouldn't be able to import my own over the top there to really set the scene. So yes, once again, commercial products are out with this, but as a toy, it does give you the full feature set and allows you to upload your end projects to the internet so other people can play it, and effectively it becomes like the Super Mario Maker of RPGs on the console, and I do think that this will be quite well supported once it gets going. So we jump into new game. This is what I've created so far. I've gone with the Middle Eastern kind of fantasy tile set. There's a whole bunch of different settings that you can produce with this. You can do a traditional fantasy setting. You can also do horror, I think, a horror. You can do Japanese kind of Eastern style aesthetics. You can do a modern aesthetic if you want to. So you've got a lot of different choices for aesthetics. I chose to go with the Middle East because I do love my Arabian Nights. And I've created this little character that you can talk to who says, "How good is digitallydownloaded.net?" See, you can put promotion into these. This is kind of native advertising. That's what I'm doing here, native advertising. So I've got 3 little buildings there, and we'll go into all of those in a second. I've also created a little interactive element here. You can see a box of apples, and I grabbed an apple. But you can only grab one apple, so I've actually programmed it so that you do have a limit to the number of apples that you can grab. But if you have a look at this, DD is the hero because, of course, more promotion for digitallydownloaded.net. But if I go into here, I now have an apple there. So all the very basics of the RPG stuff is in there. Now let's go into this house, and it's not very pretty, I know, but what do you expect? I spent an hour and a half making this. So this is all just very basic level stuff. You can do some pretty interesting things with the tile sets that you're given. You can talk to this character. She can do little emotes, which is what I was showing off with this. You can do little emotes, which is handy. And we'll go up to here. She did say don't go looking in my dresser, but we'll do that because we're a bit cheeky like that. And another little emote. And we found her underwear because of course I'm going to write that line of dialogue into this. Okay, so that's that. And as you can see, you can create transitions between screens, so you can do the full town, village, dungeon setup. We'll go into this house as well just to show you over here. Now here we've done something pretty interesting, I guess. That door is currently locked. Nothing you can do about that, but you can see that there's a passageway there which is intriguing. So we'll talk to her. She says take my key. excellent writing, if I do say so myself. I was very brief and to the point when I was writing this. But now, when we interact with that, now the door is unlocked, so we can go in. Now, I haven't done anything with that just yet, so that is what I have created so far, and that took me an hour and a half. Yeah, this software is a bit of a time sink. It can take a while to get stuff done, especially when you're playing on Nintendo Switch, where you have to manually type in the dialogue and stuff. But it does feel good when it all starts to come together. So what we're going to do with the demonstration here is, firstly, I'm going to just run through and show you the options. So here, across here is all the drawing options, but also importantly is this one, the gear option, which is the database. Now when you pull up the database, you get a whole lot of stuff here. So we've got the actors, which is the player characters that you can have. We've got classes, so you can give them all different statistics and stuff. Hero having those stats, and you can actually mess with all of that stuff. You can get really granular with this and really tweak it to your own preferences, which is kind of the point. Skills, so you can give your characters different abilities. Items, you can basically name and design every item that goes into the game. As you can see, there's an apple and a house key at 5 and 6 on the list of items there. I created those weren't already in the game. I had to create those in order to, have the effects in the game that they do. Weapons, again, you can create any weapon that you want. Armor, enemies, there's all kinds of different enemies that you can throw in. Now, if we grab this, look at here are all the different kind of enemy types. So you do have a lot of different enemies that you can play around with. You can color them and stuff. Gothic Lolita, that's a pretty cool enemy. You can basically tweak these as well with the hue. See the hue down the bottom there? So if I go into Camel Cavalry and then I change the hue, as you can see, you can actually change the color of the sprite, which allows you to do palette swapping and allows you to have, regular Goblin and King Goblin and whatever, so you can actually do what they did with the old Super NES RPGs. And those are the large size ones, and then you've got the extra large ones. And then there's a spot for DLC. DLC hasn't come yet, but when it does, you'll be able to buy additional bits and pieces, really. Let's cancel out of that. There's troops. So troops are the groups of enemies that you'll eventually fight, so you can set all of that up. States, you can create poisoned enemy, you can create poison, electrocution, paralysis, you can do all kinds of things there. Animations, you can actually mess with all of this. Tile sets, so as you can see, there's a lot of different tile sets on option. Common events system, you can put boats and ships and airships in, like Final Fantasy. Game info, you can do all that. These are all options that you can really delve into and get very granular with, very, very granular with the system, which is important if you want to get creative. So you can create a very basic RPG, or you can create something that's pretty complex. Unlike the PC version of RPG Maker, you can't get into the coding of things itself. You can't dive that deeply down. With RPG Maker on the PC, you can actually tweak the coding to really customize your game if you want to. But that's, for most people, I don't think that's going to be a big issue. Again, especially since this is a toy rather than a serious product. Okay, so here's the map. That's where you can change things around. You can put events down. You can, and we'll get into that plenty soon enough. These are all the tiles. So these are all the art assets that you have to work with when building your environments. And there's a couple of different versions. This is the in-house set of art. So when you get to town, it'll be a different set of art objects. When you get to dungeons, when you get to overmaps, you have a lot of different art assets to work with there. And then down here is the various areas that you've drawn up. So if we jump back to town, unfortunately the loading times on this can be a little bit slow because it has a lot of data to crunch, but that's okay. House 1, House 2, House 3. But for the purposes of this video, we do want to jump into House 3. Okay, so like I said, we're going to mess around with that there. We're going to create this dungeon in this video, and we're going to do it very cheap and nastily, but again, you can get very creative with this. I'm not being very creative. So, firstly, we need to create a new area because it's going to be a separate dungeon that you can jump into, and as you can see, right down there generate dungeon. So you can actually get the software to do it for you, which is very nice of them. So, you want a rooms or a maze? Let's make it a maze. Actually, no, let's go with rooms. Let's have add margins. Yeah, let's do that. Now we get to pick the wall aesthetic that we want, and it is an Arabian setting, but it is underground. So we can go with pretty boring brick, I think. Let's go with pretty boring pretty boring brick. That's a tongue twister. And then floor. So these are the floor tile options. Let's go with something a little bit dull, because it'll be, you know, dirt, basically. There we go. And then click OK, and instantly we are going to have a dungeon, which is not a very big dungeon. Shoot. And I've gone and messed things up completely, because I created a dungeon where I wanted the house. Hopefully I can go back. We're about to see just how strong the undo command is. And I can't go back. And I can't go back. I did absolutely screw this up, didn't I? That's a pity. That's a pity. I've absolutely messed it up. But that's okay. We can just load, because I hadn't created any saves. So don't do that. I made a mistake. I'll fix that up and we'll give it another go. As you can tell, because there is quite a lot to work through, quite a lot of options and whatever, it is possible to make mistakes like that if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, so, well, if you do know what you're doing, but lose concentration for a moment, as I have done there. Anyway, our house is back now. So now we're going to create new this time. Okay, so we're going to call it dungeon, and this is why things can take a little while, because you do need to type them in manually. If you play in handheld mode, you can use the touch screen, so it's a little bit faster, and for that reason I recommend it. Okay, so for now we don't want anything more here. We do want to interior, there we go. Yep. Okay. Here we can actually change the width. So let's make it a little bit more chunky. And height. So you can make it a little bit larger. You can change the size. That's the dimensions of the dungeon. Once I've created that. Okay. That's better. Now, we'll do this again. Generate dungeon. We want brick, and we want this dirt kind of look. Okay, now it's going to create a dungeon in the dungeon, which is handy. There we go. Now what's it created? Because it's randomized, you don't know what they've actually created. Oh, that's a pretty good looking little dungeon, isn't it? See, if you're not in the mood to actually manually design your dungeon, then that's a nice way, easy way of going about it and getting something done nice and quickly. Now what we're going to do is, first step is to create the link back to the house. So we want to start the dungeon here. We want to transfer, quick event creation transfer. Let's change the location, and obviously we want to teleport to house 3 here. And we want to turn up, if we go on the stairs, we want to turn back up the same stairs we went down. Okay. That's just the direction your little character will face when you're done. So that's there. You can see that now with the glowed out light. Next thing we want to do is actually put those stairs down so people know where to go if they want to go back up. So here we go. That's a set of stairs. And we want them there. Okay, so now when somebody walks over that, they'll be teleported back to the previous room. the other thing we obviously need to do is do the same thing for the house, so that when people go down the stairs, they end up in the right spot. So let's do that. We want to quick event creation, quick event creation transfer. And we want to teleport down to the dungeon. And we can do that there. So that's where we are now moving when we head down the stairs. And we probably want to be facing to the left there. Again, that's totally optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want. And now we've set that up. So now we go back into the dungeon and we see what we can do here. Okay, so next thing is, what do you want in dungeons? You always want treasure, right? So let's do a quick event creation treasure chest, because that is such a common thing. There we go. And let's give them some cash. If they open that treasure box, they get 25 gold pieces. You can actually change the name of the gold. You can change it from gold to something else if you want, in those system options I showed you earlier. So that's nice and simple. The next thing we might want to do is create a event creation, but we're going to need to do this manually because this one's going to be a little bit more complex. So we'll call this boss, because it's going to be a boss fight of sorts. Okay, boss. Now we need to give it an image. And we'll give it a character image. Now, these are all the different sprites you have to work with. Monsters and all kinds of interesting things here. So we want a monster because it is a boss. Let's go with a bat, shall we? Bat, bat, bat. And he should be fixed. You can make him move around if you want. You would have seen the characters in the NPCs earlier moving around. Anyway, so when you talk to this one, let's have him say something first, because that way he's nice and menacing. These are all the sprite options you can have if you want. These are all sprite options if you want to. Oops, maybe sub. There we go, monsters. Here's the monsters. We want Batty. And he's going to say... He's just going to say a word. So after he says that, then you go into these. These are all the options you have for handling events, which is pretty neat. So we want to enter into combat, do we not? We do want to enter into combat. Where's that option? There we go. Battle processing. So, battle processing. Yeah, let's go with 2 bats. So when you can escape, you can option that. Anyway, 2 bats. And then that will be that. Okay? Once the bats are defeated, I believe we actually need to delete that event. I think. Erase event. If you lose the battle, then it's game over, of course. But if you win the battle, the bats are gone. That's basically what I've done there. Nice and simple, isn't it? It's all very simple. This takes there's a tutorial in RPG Maker MV which will explain all of this stuff to you in a pretty engaging way. But it doesn't take long to get a hang of this at all. Okay, so now we have the basics of the dungeon. We need to do one more thing, and we need to set up random encounters, because, you know, what's the point of having a dungeon if you can't run into random encounters? So for that, we want to set up the encounters. Now, we don't want to fight bats, since the bosses are bats. We'll throw you up against 2 slimes, yeah. Slimes. Okay. Then we also need to tweak Now, if you want to make this a real grind, you can lower the encounter steps, so that means an encounter will happen every 15 steps at this point, but we want it to be pretty reasonable. In fact, we would rather, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'd rather not actually run into enemies at all, because my character hasn't been tweaked and would be absolutely slaughtered by 2 slimes. So that would not be fun when I just want to actually show you what goes on with this game. But now, you will encounter bats once every 80, slimes once every 80 steps. And just like all that, we should be pretty much ready to go. So you can save and playtest at any time. And I know I'm rushing through things here, but I don't want to make this a super long video. I just want to show you what you can actually do with this in a very, at a very basic level. So, now we're back in the game, and we're just going to run straight into here. Now, remember once again, that door is currently locked, so there must be something good in there. We are going to get the key from this person. Now, there's no reason that you have to write such short dialogue. You can write really long cutscenes and stuff if you want to. You can basically do a Final Fantasy quality, like Super NES era Final Fantasy quality game with this without any difficulty, just some patience. But again, this is less than 2 hours worth of work, and I've already created, a dungeon here. Now, hopefully, we're not going to run into any enemies. Bats are not animating. You can make them animate. I decided not to. But as you can see, squawk. And we are now in combat with 2 bats. I haven't actually removed some of those actors. So, the game actually thinks that I've got a party of 4, even though I actually don't. Unfortunately, that was a mistake. Sorry about that, but, this is what troubleshooting exists for. These bats have a lot of health. They do. Anyway. Now, another thing is, as you can see, there we go, 1 bat's down. As you can see, the background is actually just of the dungeon. You don't have to do that. I'll show you what I mean soon enough. Once I get through this battle. If I can get through this battle. If I survive, I think I should. I've made the difficulty nice and low, even though none of my characters have equipment. So you can remove those actors if you want to have just the 1 character, of course, which was my intention when I started to create this, but having not playtested it beforehand, I did make the mistake of not removing those characters properly. But as you can see, this is all kind of Dragon Quest perspective, first-person combat. But you can actually switch it, so it's a side-on combat as well. So it's more like the Final Fantasy games. There we go. And the bats are gone. Now we can grab our treasure. So that is what I created in this little video, which is not very long. And you can do it very quickly. Randomize a dungeon, throw in a couple of events. You've got treasure chests, you've got monsters, you've got all the drama of a full-fledged RPG. If we go back in here and edit again, I can't remember how to change the background right. Hang on. So yeah, I haven't messed around with the combat just yet. But if I go into the settings here, I believe this is where you do it. Enemies, troops. You can change the backgrounds here. These are all these different background options that you have. If you want to put it there. There you go. Now it looks like that. And that's that. So anyway, that is a very quick walkthrough about what you can do with RPG Maker MV. I hope that was interesting. I highly recommend this. I'm going to have a review up on digitallydownloaded.net, of course, and you'll be able to check that out if you'd like. But it's going to be very positive. I think this is an excellent toy. It's a great way of getting your feet wet with gameplay design and thinking about how to make a game. It gives you the opportunity to play other people's games. There should be a strong community that's built up around this, and I highly, highly recommend it. I've created a whole dungeon with enemies to fight and stuff in 15 minutes of video. So it's not that much, it's not that onerous. It gives you that first look, it gives you that understanding of logic in terms of game development, and if you really love it, then you can always go and grab the PC one afterwards and start to create your own commercial products using the same system. Just import your own assets and start to play around with the coding. Anyway, if you are a fan of RPG Maker, do let me know. I do want to talk to people about this. Feel free to throw up any kind of information on any games that you create in RPG Maker on this, so that other people who might see the channel jump on and give your game a go. Feel free to do that. Please do click the like and subscribe button if you enjoy my videos. That way I'll be able to continue to build this channel. Please consider backing me on Patreon as well. Even $1 a month is a huge help. Otherwise, have a great weekend. We will be around tonight for a stream. I'm not sure what we'll play yet, but it'll be fun. Feel free to jump on and chat with me as we do that. Otherwise, I will see you at the next video.